right.
Good morning.
Okay, so today we are going to really get into it on a topic that I am extremely passionate about. And before, when we woke up this morning, I said to Victor, so we need to record. And he goes, yeah, let's talk about RV living. I'm like, yeah,
No.
we should just talk about how we organize our RV because that's what people look up. And I'm like, I just can't do that. I can't go and walk around and show you how I organize my spice cabinet. I mean, I guess maybe eventually it'll be self-growth for me to show you how I hang my clothes in my closet. But that just seems so boring to me. So we are going to get deep into the same topics that we've been talking about. It's a little bit of a natural progression from the last two videos where we talked about these big three huge mistakes that we made in RVing for the last 6 years. And then really like the three reasons, and how yesterday's video was about how they are tied to belief systems. And really we look back and go, wow, we took two totally different belief systems into this travel. So
if you didn't know,
real quick,
go ahead. Got to tell us a story. Got to tell you the story.
Go for it.
Well, we moved all of our kids into a 28-foot Class C motorhome, sold everything, traveled the world, visited a bunch of countries, and then we took our problems on the road and we learned from them, and we're here to share some of those videos with you and our experiences, and a lot of it is awesome, but a lot of it has been challenging. And so we worked in the health fitness industry for 20 years. I still work as a personal trainer online.
So here we go, getting into it. That was a long-winded introduction.
To get uncomfortable.
So there's a reason Victor's wearing his red Defy the Norm shirt today.
The other one was dirty. I wore it 6 days in a row.
And then he washed it, and it doesn't fit now.
Yeah, fat guy in a little coat.
See, now you guys are trying to figure out why we're together. All right, so if you don't know, I have this chakra healing course, and we're going to talk about what it is. This is my cool workbook, which there's the link, and you can either order it. The only thing, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get if you like it all spiral bound, or you can just buy it and download it and print it out yourself. But the reason we struggled with our travel, with not having a plan, with different belief systems, not being on the same page, came down to really this topic. And my husband is so nice that I begged him, I'm like, please, will you share your experience with everybody? I know it sounds like so hard. We talked about that image thing yesterday, but so many people have this same struggle, and it's not a struggle. It's part of life. And like, the more you can get past this, then the more freedom and happiness you get to experience. And wouldn't you say firsthand that because you work through this, you get to experience so many amazing things?
Yes.
Good answer.
That'll be the picture.
Muladhara is your root chakra. Now I understand, chakras, is it really a thing? It's a thing. Just trust me, and I'm gonna break it down as a framework in a lot of different ways. But one of the things that your root chakra kind of governs, I don't like to use govern words, but it kind of nurtures your sense of safety, security, and support. And this is really, really, really important if you're a parent, because your job as a parent is to make sure you don't mess up your kids' root chakra. Because most of the world right now has damaged root chakra. And if your root chakra is damaged, you're ending up having sacral chakra issues. And like, those two combined is pretty much all the like fear mongering we see in the world right now, and why people are struggling. And I just want to give them all a big hug and be like, it's okay.
Yeah, I think we should take a step back and talk, because there's a lot of people that don't know chakras, and they think, for me, I always think about that Hadouken that Ryu used in Street Fighter. And so chakras no more than energy. So we're, from a spiritual standpoint, from a religious standpoint, we're not trying to change your belief. In many ways, we're not trying to change your belief system, but have a different understanding of what's going on in you. So Muladhara is at the base of your spine, the lowest part, right?
Correct. And then you end up with a ladder.
There's and it's 7. Red.
Red is if you want to like open up your root chakra, wearing red supposedly helps, but you actually have to do all these other things too.
You can't just wear a red t-shirt. I've tried it. Doesn't work.
And you can't eat just beef, red meat all the time. He tries that too, but it just doesn't quite work, but it helps.
Grass-fed.
You have to also, so like I said, do you think the world's going to be more technology based? Probably. Yes. But also energy. Like if this might not be something that resonates right now. You might be like, Robin, you're telling me I'm all energy. I'm like, look, it depends where your life takes you, or if you're in a city, you might not feel the energy coming off of like a forest like I do when I'm hiking. There's just different experiences that we have to have. When you start meditating more and you really like shut out the outside world and draw in, then you might start feeling these real vibrations, like how you were saying when you meditate laying down versus sitting up.
Oh yeah, that's a little side note, but it's very, very powerful for me. First, I drug my feet about getting involved in meditation, but when we started running a home in Polson and meditation became part of our everyday practice along with yoga, I noticed a significant difference in how the world was interacting with me from a lying position. Well, first off, like this right knee's kind of like all the years of jiu-jitsu and kneeling, like this right knee kind of gives me some problems. Of course, that could be linked to something else, which we get to another time. But I found that I could lay down much more comfortable than sitting. But I noticed that everyone was, except for Daniel. Daniel would lay down too. Sometimes. But most everyone else either use a bolster.
Remember, it would be like this. You would lay down, and everyone get mad at you, like you're messing up the circle of energy.
Yeah. So I'd bolster up, and all of a sudden, I would start actually feeling something happening. Right? It was like a pulse. Boom. It mirrored like sort bass. Of. It's like a bass, like, kind of like that. No, but it was a little like it was resonating a little bit more. So I do everything in my power now to sit up and have that experience. First off, because it's kind of an amazing thing for me to have put in that much time, and then I sit in that position.
So the first part is like, if you don't believe us about the chakras and the energy, like try meditating 5 minutes at a time, and then see if you start noticing. The big thing is once you start noticing that energy, then we want to start directing it. And that's kind of what we're talking about today, is how we can direct this energy. So if you have like it'll say on the bottom of this first part of the workbook, it kind of tells you what symptoms. So if you have any root chakra blockages, so think of it as a funnel, or I should be able to explain this better. If you're pouring a ton of energy into one area, that's going to be overactive. So sometimes a blockage can mean like underactive, like we shy away from it, or it could be that it's overactive and we're like sending all of our energy right to it. So you might feel like you have a ton of anxiety, or on high alert, like for the longest time, like if something dropped, Victor would be like, "What's that?" Jumpy. I'm like, "Oh, calm down." Panic attacks. Now
I don't have that.
We're going to
add a couple of those.
We will be uploading a video because Victor has an entire series on helping people with that. We touched on it in another video that back in 2009 he had these panic attacks and started having
exhaustion,
all of these symptoms here. But anyways, trouble making decisions, low self-esteem. You need a lot of affirmation, tightness in your knees, your hips, tightness in your legs and your knees. Chronic low back pain is a huge indicator, I think. Because you'll say with a lot of your clients that he's amazing at healing injuries, and some can fix pretty quick, and some it's like, you've done everything right, and this is not going away.
Yeah, because to the point, I started off as a physical therapy major, and so I bring a lot of that when I work with clients, and it gets to a point where, look, I've done all the physical therapy. Everything you're showing me right now, you got good range of motion, you have functional strength. Like this chronic discomfort, everyone's pain is their own. Can't say now you're lying to me, but at the same time we need to learn to address other things that could be, and that's sort of my evolution as a trainer, is to start to draw upon this other side, the emotional, the mental side, and just, hey man, like, could it be this? Do you want to talk about it? You don't need to talk about it with me. Trust me, because I don't need more people breaking down with me. That's sort of part of the game, is that you work with people long enough, they start squeezing muscles. All of a sudden, all these emotions come out. I'm like, what do I do? It's okay. You could do it.
And that part of that is, because it probably triggers some of these same things for you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Fine.
Absolutely.
And so we've painted a picture. This is probably why we haven't done this, is because we had to, can't just show up and be like, look at this is my spice rack. And I mean, I could, I guess, but there's so much more. We really, 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 if you can't tell, want everyone to live happy, fulfilling, exciting lives. And so sometimes it's not just like, sometimes you can't just throw a product on it. Sometimes it takes drawing within, and we want to try to make this not so hard, because I can tell you, so you've probably been working on this for a good year now.
Yeah.
Probably a good solid
I
year.
mean, essentially, the vulnerability and accepting that and working towards it, but everyone's got issues. I think the sooner you realize that, and the weirdness factor, like, hey, we're all weird, we're all different, we're all sort of broken, and we're all working on putting the understanding what's going on inside us and becoming a better expression. For me, it's always about like trying to be a better husband and father. And
yeah, so there's a couple things. I'm going to talk about RV travel first, and how RV travel actually, why we don't do it to begin with. So if we have any root chakra, we as a collective, we maybe as a marriage, if we have any reluctancy to embrace this lifestyle, safety, is for sure a concern. I know a lot of really brave solo travelers who it was a big deal for them to go do this, and that's awesome. But for them to do it, they probably really thought about, like, is it safe? Like, if I'm in a campground, like, if you live in a city and you're not used to camping, you probably start to think, like, is it actually safe for me to be in a campground? Well, most campgrounds, yes, but I'm sure we've come across a few sketchy campgrounds before. I mean, we like to free camp sometimes. We often pull in at a truck stop and sleep overnight, or pull in a Walmart parking lot. Well, if I'm by myself, I'm going to really think through those things. I'm going to, there is a time and place when your root chakra should be a little bit on alert. Like, is this safe right now? Am I putting myself in a more vulnerable situation? So it is absolutely important to think through some of these things. Support is another part of a balanced root chakra. So if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be alone. What if something breaks down and I'm on the side of the road? These are all legitimate fears. How am I going to make money if I choose to RV travel? That was a big one for us. It's always a challenge for us to find this balance in making money this way, where for 20 years we taught and coached people in person, and we could turn it on like that, and people could feel our energy. And that's where it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize how much we have to be on camera to communicate what people used to experience with us in person. So those are all tangible fears, but how do you get past them? Well, I can tell you, for one, practice or with time, but overall, most of the time you find an amazing tribe when you start RV living. I can tell you the story of when we first bought, before we lived full time, we bought this fifth wheel trailer that was a toy hauler, because we wanted to take our quads out to the desert. And of course, I had to buy a badass truck to go with it. And
it didn't really work all that well, though.
It had an amazing lift. It was
wait,
exhaust.
It had military size Humvee tires on it.
And I loved this truck. And then I realized it doesn't turn. I didn't put two and two together, but I was just excited. Oh yeah, let's get it. And then you go to back in the fifth wheel the first time in a tight campground. If you camp in California state parks, they tend to be really tight campgrounds for.
And we've never picked up a fifth wheel, and then you're
my gosh,
this big oversized lift tires. I'm like, we had to get help.
I can't turn it. And so a guy came in and he helped me. And he's like, oh yeah, no worries. He got the trailer in. I think that is really cool. I thought it was like, yes, I love the feeling of community. Wow, we're all pitching in. Overall, if you choose to RV travel, or even if you just start RV camping, you're going to find that more times than not. It's
sort of like the scene in RV where
totally
like the scene in RV where Robin Williams pulls in and is going to dump the sewer, trying to drop the black water, drop the poop, and he's having some trouble, and someone shows up and is like, hey man, you need some help? And he's like, no, I got it. And eventually everyone like gets together like, hey, we're going to get this done. And everyone's like, I'll get the tortilla chips. Bring them. And that's an extreme, obviously, in that situation.
That might get you to not want to do this.
Yeah. But in general, like if you're having trouble, the community is pretty amazing in that regard.
So it definitely helps if you start off with having a plan, knowing what campgrounds you're going to go to, traveling slower so you have time to adjust for if something breaks down.
AAA.
Definitely. We still don't have AAA. Maybe we should. So things like that. Now, the benefit, though, of in RV camping or RV travel is that, one, a lot of times it puts you in nature. So being in nature itself is good for your root chakra. It definitely helps you feel more grounded. It helps you to just start to notice energy. You probably, and if I didn't mention before, some people maybe don't notice it. I know when we first started traveling, it was kind of like a big deal. Victor, wow, I feel way different when I'm just sitting under the stars, like sitting in nature. And it's like, yeah, of course, but you don't always feel like that.
You got to do it in order to feel it, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to get those experiences so that you can at least you go, oh yeah, been done that, don't like it that much. I'm gonna go back in my concrete jungle.
Yeah. Another thing is that in order to balance out that root chakra and not feel like not have those struggles of am I safe, am I secure, am I grounded, and this comes up. So the chakras kind of. So there's 7. Imagine like if you grew up with any type of trauma, like we've talked about, that was a big thing to start with. Another one is sometimes our just natural wiring. Sometimes this is a nurture nature. I would say for Victor, what we've worked through, it is 50% nature and 50% nurture. Part of it's just how he was brought up. Part of it was like how he was just wired. And so naturally, some people, your Enneagram 6s and some Enneagram 2s, you are naturally just a little bit more anxious, a little bit more fearful. And doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it, you just have to kind of accept it and know where your starting point is. And you're going to, like for a lot of 6s, you have to travel to the same destinations over and over. That made a big difference in our 6 years. First time whenever we got somewhere, it was not good. But then the second trip there, I'm like, oh, we're going back to Bend, Oregon, whatever. It's like, all right, I know Bend. I'm coming. Like that made such a difference. Even right now, we're in St. George. I'm like, I've been to St. George before. This is going to be okay. You had?
When?
Snow Canyon.
Oh yeah.
And also when we, I would say your Myers-Briggs. So remember, we haven't done a lot of talks about this, but your MBTI, so Victor's a defender. He's ISFJ. His naturally is going to need a little bit more of that repetitiveness. He also tends to need a little bit more affirmation. If somebody tells me, hey, good job, I'm like, yeah, I know. Okay, whatever. I need other things. I need, obviously, a lot of other things. We can definitely go into how messed up I am. Another one. So these things start to play a role. And again, it's not right or wrong. You have to just step back and like, oh, okay, I need a little bigger tribe of support. I'm going to need to also make sure that maybe I go first. My first trip is somewhere that I've been before and stayed in a hotel. And this time I'm going to stay in a campground, but I know the city. I'm not going to be like small steps. I joke because my mom's a type 6 and she always travels to the same place in Arizona. I'm like, really? You're not going to go somewhere new? Like, every so often it's somewhere new, but it's like 4 or 5 trips. And then once I learned about Enneagram, I'm like, oh, it's really good that you go to the same place over and over. Your sister goes to Cancun all the time. I'm like, it's probably really good to go, if you're naturally an anxious person, to just go to the same places over and over.
For years we went, I didn't realize that Hawaii, I went to North Shore Kauai, and first off, it's a very spiritually amazing place. The energy is ridiculously healing out there on the North Shore with the trade winds. But some part of me was like, I love just going back, knowing exactly where the hikes where we're going to do, the beaches we like, the food, where we get our food, things like that.
Yeah, it definitely helped. So again, I would, if any of this is like
resonating,
that I would highly recommend maybe download, there's a link in the description, or in the show notes to like take a look at this. The next step of this is like, what do you do with it? Because I think with Victor, naturally we're around each other all the time, so I can be in my really empathetic way, like, oh,
No.
that's your root chakra again. Like, I mean, our video of like when he didn't want to leave Polson and come with us on this trip was literally the root chakra freaking out. Like, how dare I finally feel safe on this land. I have my routine. I don't feel like any intruders are coming in at any point. Like, how dare you ask me to get in a truck and drive somewhere, even if it is familiar, that is going to just unground me. And it was a big, when you're like close to somebody, it obviously gets, like, if it was a stranger, I'd be like, it's okay. Like, hey, let's write out the steps that we can take to make this more enjoyable for you. Well, the problem is like in that situation, he probably would not even have the desire to go on that trip. You're like, I just want to stay here. But he's the desire to be with me.
Included.
And so we have to find this way of balancing it out. And I think we did a pretty good job. I mean, it's the only way to apply it better would be in that moment to stop and be like, well, first I needed sleep. I need to get a good night's sleep. And then I need to come at it with a rational mind and say like, okay, these are my tangible fears that, here's fear. I'm like, I'm going to lose clients. I'm not going to have Wi-Fi. These are and then for me to come back and say, okay, these are tangible fears, but like, can we try? And if this happens, then we'll adjust. And that's kind of what we've done in the last couple of trips is, hey, if we get to somewhere and there's no Wi-Fi, we will make sure or right now, okay, we got a place that's really good Wi-Fi. Hey, I'm kind of happy. Let's just stay here for another week. Awesome. Right? That's helped a lot.
Yeah, I think figuring out what those things will make, but you have to have that dialogue. You have to have that communication, that open level of communication without too much being in a relationship. It can, we say this out loud, but in the end, it's way more difficult to put into practice because emotion comes in and you get heated and you can't get to that point where you're systematically attacking it. Like, all right, let's do this and this. So it's part of growth.
Another one is, I know this one's kind of harder to look at because if you download this part of the workbook, there's some hard questions in there, and I think it's a big step to first be like, okay, what is it that? Because if we talk about that, it could be linked to childhood trauma or feeling not loved as a child, or like just not feeling like you can get self-affirmation, that you're always reaching for affirmation from somebody else. It's really a huge thing to be able to make yourself independently happy. And you start writing these things, it's one thing. That's a huge thing. If you can like be honest with yourself.
Can I interject? Yeah. I think I had a stepping process for this. As soon as I looked at the questions, they slid this to me. And the first time, I just read them. Then I did it a second time and I let them resonate a little bit more. And then I just thought about what my answers were going to be. And the third and final evolution is like, I got to get over this. All right, let's put it down on paper. Let's actually write it down. Yeah. So those were some good steps for me because I can go, honestly, I get like the first time I read these, they made my hairs on my arm. Like I went, like I had a visceral impact, like, here we go. And so that's all normal and actually all really, really good. Remember, we are, as much as you like to think of yourself as especially for me, like, dude, I'm tough, I can handle it, I don't push that down. Like, to me, I now accept these visceral, those impacts that I'm having are completely normal. And like, wow, I'm alive, I'm here.
And literally every time that happens, you're breaking up crystallizations. Like you're releasing trapped energy. And eventually, as you start to release all of it, that's when you become that person who's just vibrating so high and can go like live life in rad life, right? Joy and chase your dreams and create amazing experiences. That's what we're trying to get to. And I was going to add the fourth step, and the step you're kind of is catching the fourth step, and the step he's probably working on, or is that in that moment where like, hey, I'm hitching up the fifth wheel. Do you want to come? Do you want to not come? To catch it, to like, you've already journaled it, but you're like, catch it in your head and think, is my overreaction right now have to do with that thing that I've been journaling about, that I've been trying to like let go? Because we write it, we release some of it, but it takes a lot of repetition to like get it out of your energy systems.
And it takes a lot of energy to understand that a stressful situation, for me, a stressful situation can put me in a state where it is directly linking to the past and how I reacted to a stressful situation back then. Let me repeat that. How you are reacting to your stress right now is potentially linked to your past, particularly in your childhood. And so if you think about it, like you are in a loving relationship, money gets a little bit tight, all of a sudden you're reacting in a stressful situation, but you're not reacting to this, you're reacting to that. And this person has to deal with how you dealt with that. And they don't like, dude, you're crazy. What's going on? Like, hey, it's go time. Let's just get this done. Instead, you're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Well, like
I'll share how that happens in our relationship. For me, is remember I told you yesterday's video or podcast that nurture nature for our belief system, where Victor maybe had a little bit more like we're only allowed this much, and I was kind of as my type A, I'm like, well, I can go create whatever I want. Well, I was a very, very driven child, like always straight A's. My parents never really had to tell me to study. I was like, I got that. I was just internally driven. But what happened was, as like say when we first started dating, my mom used to come in, like was really strict on me. I'm like, I'm 17, so I was younger, but at the same time, she was just really hard on me. Like, no, you can't go out. What are you doing on the streets with Victor at 10 at night? And we'd hit heads, and I couldn't have a rational conversation with her. She just was like, no. Well, I know now, looking back, I mean, she was just reliving her childhood traumas and projecting it out on me. And here I'm like, I have a full-time job at 17. I have a full-time job, straight A student. Like, we're hanging out watching a movie. Like, even if we're doing something else, like I'm responsible. And so when it's like, so I moved out, right? When I turned 18, I was like on my own. I'm like, I'm just going to go do this myself. Well, the same thing happens when I go, hey, I want to go take the fifth one. No, I'm not going. That sets a trigger for me to be like, wait.
I already did this.
I did this once. Like, I love you. I want you to be there with me, but I'm not like, we can have a rational conversation with this, but it's not at first I'm just like, well, fine, I'm leaving. I'm going on my own anyways. And if you want to, and then we come around to it. At that time, I just went on like, please, just get in the truck. Please come with me. I really want you there. And then, we get there and we work it out. But that's vulnerable. There you go. That's how hard it is to work through those things. Brain is 5 times more likely to remember a stick than a carrot. And I was thinking about that with us when like bad things could happen, but I don't hold on to very many of them. There are a few that I definitely do, especially with my description of relationship, because my mom and my husband are very similar in certain things that I'm like, ooh, that I do catch myself like, oh, that was an emotional trigger from a stick that I'm carrying from my childhood. But for the most part, 3 flat tires in 24 hours, whatever. I don't really hold that as a stick, where some people would be like, oh my gosh, but we got 3 flat tires in 24 hours. And you start to hold, for me in our travels, especially our adventure travel, I hold on to one tiny carrot. Like, oh my gosh, there was that amazing climb we did. That amazing. And that'll fuel tons of adventures after that, even if the others aren't nearly as good. You tend to hold on to those sticks pretty tight, or you less now, but for a long time.
For sure. I think we're wired for that. And again, I still think it comes down to an unhealthy root chakra, that you have a tendency to reach for those sticks.
And I mentioned it.
And what does that mean? What does that mean? That's like, we're wired for fear, right? So like an animal is going to drink from the river, and it's designed to remember that it got ambushed before. And so it remembers every time it goes to the river, it's going to remember what? Oh my God, the water tastes so amazing. Or geez, you know what? I could get eaten here. There's a reason we probably developed in some way to remember that, but we don't. It's doing us a disservice now.
And the big reason I mentioned it is more just to put that idea in your head that, oh, this thing, consciousness, the fifth chakra seems like juju, spiritual juju, like consciousness is a doorway to a lot of possibilities, and that we can add science to it to say like, hey, we can measure that when your consciousness is at this level, your brain's going to be very linear. But what happens if you get it to a higher level or a higher consciousness? And to get to that higher consciousness, we have to move towards fear, trust, oneness, connection, all those things that are like, oh, our root chakra wants to keep us in anxiety, fear, anger, those things that we have to break through. That if you catch yourself, oh, I'm moving through my day, am I acting out of fear or love right now? Yeah. Literally catching yourself and be like, how can I act out of trust? How can I act out of love? Makes it so your brain literally relays faster. Not only relays faster, it relays into this etheric, is that how you say the ether space? Etheric, sure. Etheric space of...
It's a good word. We'll go with it.
It's like this space between matter. So it's not so tangible. It's like this space where intuition lies. And if you don't, we also call it like third eye, but if you're not naturally a very intuitive, like for me, I can't describe sometimes things. I just feel it before I like necessarily feel it emotionally. I just know. And that's how we end up traveling a lot of times. I'm like, I just know, like it's time to move, or it's time to go here. Or, like I used to joke about, I'll talk about this on Instagram sometimes, how much I love to just be at a crossroads and should we go left or right? Left.
So many times we've been in that situation. We literally get out of the car.
And you don't have to like go through the steps of like, by the time your brain goes to, well, what's the logical decision or what's the emotional decision? It already just knows. It knows the intuitive decision. Mm-hmm. And that's it's something you can actually train. And so Gabby, like I said, Gabby Isabel and I work on this stuff a lot, but we have some courses, but we're kind of repackaging them right now into some more baby steps, because I think some of the steps are too big. So step one, if any of this resonates, step one, start with the root chakra one. Start with the link, the free root chakra PDF, and then if like that is in, then it'll show you the next steps along the way.
That's a trigger, right? And so seeing the staircase is a challenging part. We've been working as coaches for a long time, and when a client walks in my door, I know, okay, this is what their staircase is going to look like to get them to blank. And so the same thing here. So everyone's staircase, like the goal is here, right? To get, what is the goal, right? That self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, the real goal, I mean, I'm going to say in my SoCal dialogue, it's a rad life. But in reality, it's being able to lead your life every day. Not like once a week, not even once a year, like every day, seeking flow state, seeking that creative space where you're getting to have self-expression. I mean, like, oof. That's it. That's really the goal here, is for us to, when you're in flow state, like everything just makes sense. You can't help but feel joy when you're in flow state. Like, wow, I just did that. That's amazing. And so we have to tap into creativity, but we can't tap into creativity until we feel worthy of it and feel worthy of using our voice and sharing our purpose here on earth. So that's the big staircase. If that's
flow state might be a whole nother YouTube, because we just probably like, oh, what are you talking?
And flow state does not have to be just extreme sports. Flow state is just when you're like just time,
everything clicks.
Yeah.
And
you lose track of time because you're just so in the moment of like, wow, this is living. Wow, it's Pura Vida.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so that's a wrap for today. I think we gave you plenty of
Blew
things.
your mind.
If you made it to the end here, nice job. I'm so proud of you.
Subscribe.
I will try. We'll try to do something like light tomorrow that's like spice cabinets, or how I hang my clothes in my closet, or something that, I don't know, that SEO is way better than consciousness and black chakras. All right. Thanks, you guys.